Hey, deserving listeners, the trial, I think they're about to do cross-examination with Amber Heard. I'm finally getting to it. It's been probably a month, maybe more, since this was actually happening, but I'm making my way through the trial, trying to catch up to things, but I'm curious as to how this is going to go. Let's watch.
I don't understand. Is this what you want?
No. Oh, no, a hug will save it all. Everything we just been
I just wanted to touch you.
through. Really? After all the shit you just said?
I just wanted to give
After
you
all
a
this
hug.
shit you fucking accused me of?
Yes.
Okay, so we're listening to another audio clip in which it appears that Johnny Depp is claiming, prior to this clip starting, that she was being hostile with him verbally, and now she wants to hug. He is rejecting that. She is now pleading, I just want to hug you. And he's saying, after all the stuff you just said,
Please stop me. Please stop. Please, I just wanted to hug you and say bye. I wanted to end that.
We did that last night. It's fine. That was
okay, hard to know what's happening because I never know who knows it's being recorded, because if both of them know it's being recorded, how authentic is this? Hard to know, but I use it as a jumping off point. For people that suffer from borderline, they will often have these sorts of behaviors. I don't know if Amber has borderline, but because people with borderline have abandonment traumas, rejection traumas, separation from attachment traumas, they are all frequently wanting contact and also very wary of getting close because they are positive that they're going to be betrayed and abandoned. When they are, and I've never really described this before, but hearing all the evidence does remind me of other clients that I've worked with. I specialize in people with personality disorders, particularly borderline, because a lot of people with borderline come to therapy. And I also take a lot of pride in being able to help people with borderline because so many clinicians seemingly don't know what they're doing, will reject clients even if they know the client has borderline. They'll say, you're uncurable, I don't want to work with you, you're going to sue me, all this misinformation. So certainly there are a lot of therapists that don't do that, but there are some. Anyway, but when I think about the clients that I've worked with, there is a common cycle to this. And I'll just speak about the relationship that they have with me, because a big part of my model, which is an evidence-based model of treating people with borderline personality disorder, is that you utilize the relationship between therapist and client. It's not the only material that you talk about, but it is something that can really further therapy in a much more rapid pace, because instead of talking about other relationships, you can actually talk about what's happening between you and the client. Plus, a big part of the corrective experience that a client benefits from is really knowing what's going on inside of my mind, because they're often very paranoid about what's going on in my mind and very reassured when I can convince them that their paranoias are not true, meaning that I don't secretly want to terminate with them and I do like them. And although sometimes they might hurt my feelings or scare me at times, it doesn't mean I have any impulse to leave them. It just means that I'm a human being and I have reactivity, and that's okay. I can have emotions, but that doesn't mean you have to actually change anything. That's just part of the work here, and I'm okay with it. I can take it, that kind of thing. And I will never leave you. And so unless you leave me or I die or I retire, which I always, and it might sound funny to talk this way, but when I was in my 20s and I started working with my first borderline clients would often be telling me, are you going to terminate with me? All week I couldn't stop thinking about the fact that one day you're going to retire, or one day maybe you're going to die or something, and then I won't be with you. This is the hypervigilance that people with insecure attachment, and borderline will exhibit. It's a massive amount of anxiety. In fact, a lot of people with borderline, the first thing that they will come into therapy for is what they will call anxiety, but really it's this hypervigilance of abandonment. And so for the client that I'm thinking of, one in particular, she would tell me that for every minute of every day in between our sessions, she would worry that I was going to terminate with her, and it would manifest in these different ways. And so I would tell her, one, I'm the sort of therapist that won't do that. I've never, even to this day, terminated with a client because I just didn't like them or something. It's always been, I mean, I'd have to do a full survey in my head of all the of my records in terms of all my clients. But generally speaking, clients terminate with me. I stick around until they leave me. We might have a conversation about whether the therapy is helping or whether it's wise to take a break. But the vast majority of clients, they know when the therapy is no longer helping or isn't worth it or something. And I adopted this policy because there were so many clients that were traumatized by, in fact, one of my very first borderline clients, I didn't know she had borderline. She came in to talk about some other thing. She came in to talk about parenting, and we had like 1 or 2 months of sessions and had achieved the therapeutic goal of helping her with her parenting skills and her emotional regulation. And at the end of that 4 to 8 session stint, she said, I think I'm good. And I was like, oh, okay, well, so I guess we can terminate now, because she was presenting that way. And then she came in and she was really upset with me. She was like, I can't believe you were going to terminate with me. I mean, why would you treat me that way? And I'm like, oh, I see. Something else is going on here. Well, and I would have asked her, well, are there other things you want to work on? Because if there's nothing else you want to work on, then, I'd just be wasting your time if you came in here and your money. So she eventually came up with some other goals. I can't remember what it was. But then as time went on, I realized, oh, she actually does have borderline personality disorder. And I talked with her about that, and she agreed with it. She had never heard of it back then. This would have been in the 90s. And so even though I was in my 20s, I would have to reassure these clients that my retirement was very far into the future. Just imagine I'm 28 years old and I'm like, I'm not going to retire. Don't worry about that. And I'm also not moving out of Seattle. That was another thing that people would get really worried about. And it's not ridiculous that they have this anxiety, because of course they do, because they were abandoned growing up in very severe ways. And subsequent relationships often are abandoning to them. They either choose people who tend to abandon, or they react in relationships such that abandonment happens, or the relationship breaks up and it feels like an abandonment. And so there's a lot of reasons why borderline clients will worry about that. Plus, they really want secure attachment. They've always wanted it since they were born. They've never had it. And so when they meet me or other therapists that are available, they're like, maybe this is the final time where I can actually get my attachment needs met. So they have a lot of hopes and dreams, like an entire lifetime of hopes and dreams are poured into this relationship. And so, yeah, even though I was so young, I would be reassuring them that I'm not going to retire anytime soon, and I'm also not moving out of Seattle. The common cycle that I would see in a lot of clients in their relationship with me, which was emulative of their relationships with everyone in their life, was in the beginning, they would often be very idealizing of me. They would praise me. They would say that I was the best therapist of all time. And it wasn't like it was false, but it's an all good mindset, and a lot of needs are coming forward, right? And then one way to think about this phase is that it's a innocent phase where they're able to exhibit and express their dependency needs, their needs for closeness and attachment in a very unbridled manner. And they're getting a lot of needs met during this phase there, because the therapist will often respond well to that. And so there will be a lot of corrective experiences. You rinse and repeat that phase enough times, people will believe that they are lovable and that other people won't abandon them. And only through that experience do they neurologically start to really believe that, and thus don't have the defenses that lead to them pushing other people away. But anyway, so during this time, it's a naive phase. It's a kind of innocent phase, and it's a childish phase where they're like 5 years old and they're just holding on to their parent, being, I love you, I love you, I love you. You're the best, you're the best, you're the best. And then eventually, though, that will take its toll, because that's a lot of vulnerability, right? And eventually there will be a trigger, and the individual will often want to create a scenario where there's some testing to it, because when they're in this phase, if I was to think about it like a balancing act, it's like they're trying to get upright. And by being very all good, seeing you as all good, they're kind of starting to right themselves. It's just like, okay, you're available to me. You're available to me. Yeah. Okay. I love you. You're just the best. You're the best. You're the best. And then I'm like, okay, whatever you want, I'm here for you, whatever you want to talk about. And they're appreciative of that. But then as they finally kind of cross this threshold, you could consider it like they feel finally secure kind of in their relationship. Also, I think they start to recognize that they've been vulnerable for a while, very open and very vulnerable to the risks of being abandoned, or something will happen that I will do, like maybe I'll be tired in one session, or I'll make a mistake in one session. But I think it coincides with what's happening inside of the client, where the vulnerability is starting to catch up to them. And then they hit this point where they're going down the other side of the slide, if you will, the mountain, where they start to look for things that you're doing, things that I was doing that was signs that I didn't like them, and that I was going to abandon them, and that I was going to terminate with them, and that I hated them, and that I was judging them and critical secretly. It was always like this secret criticism that I was harboring for them, which didn't exist anyway, because I'm not the sort of therapist that would be that way. And plus, I'm pretty honest with my clients. If I did have a criticism, I would just say, well, if you want a criticism, I'll tell you, sometimes blah, 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 but that's about it in my head. So, because I feel like, especially for these kinds of clients, to act like I never have any criticism of them is unrealistic and would come across as a lie and would be crazy making to the client. So it's better just to tell them, and also to go through a lot of therapy myself, so that I don't walk around just judging and criticizing people unfairly and not seeing people as good, which, I do anyway. So on this phase, the individual will start to scrutinize, and they'll get triggered pretty easily. And in this phase, they're starting to pull back in terms of their risk taking. They're kind of like in a vulnerability hangover, and they're just like, oh boy, I was really vulnerable. What am I doing here? And then they get angry. They get triggered just by that recognition of their own vulnerability, even though I haven't done anything. Or maybe I, again, did do something. It depends. And then in this phase, they are on an all bad. They're heading towards the all bad phase of me, where I am all bad. And they've completely lost touch with how awesome I am and how wonderful I am. And this is why when I work with supervisees that have borderline clients, I tell them to be extremely wary of the amount of praise that you'll get during certain phases of the therapy, because in other relationships, you can kind of bank on that of just like, oh, okay, I'm doing good, I can relax. But with borderline clients, you typically can't relax. You can be caring and compassionate and available and open, but you can't be completely without any defenses up. You have to know that the other shoe is going to drop at some point, and you just got to be ready for it. Otherwise, as a therapist, you can be completely devastated. It can be very difficult to deal with just personally, but also if you're not ready for it, you can actually reject or then go on the defensive, and then where are you in the therapy and the corrective experience there? So you always have to have a little bit of a wall up just in case something happens, particularly as things start to happen. But anyway, so then the individual will start to criticize me, attack me, I'm all bad, I'm terrible. And people with borderline, not always, but they often know how to get under your skin. They learn from an early age, it was often modeled to them, how to really hurt someone else's feelings. Late in my career, I'd be working with a borderline client, and I would be very secure in my abilities as a therapist. I wasn't so much in the beginning, but I was later. And I would start to get this attack from a client. I'd be like, okay, here it is. And I was a specialist, and I studied it, and I would actually advertise myself. So I knew what I was getting into. And I was like, okay, here it is. They're starting to attack me, and that's okay. And I know what to say. I say, well, I'm doing my best, and, yeah, please tell me. And I'm sorry, or whatever. There's just various different ways of reacting that are genuine, but just not getting defensive or taking it personally, right? But almost all of my clients with borderline knew how to eventually get in there. And it was masterful. Even though I had seen it before, I knew it was coming, I would often have long conversations with my trainees about, like, understand that this isn't, you don't take it personally, it's not them, it's their traumas, just, and when it would happen to me, for 15 minutes, I'd be fine. Half an hour might be fine. 5 sessions, I might be fine. But at some point, there's this, you cross this line, the client would just really just dig in there, and it would just, that's all I could feel in the moment. It's just like, I am a loser. And of course, in that moment, they are making me feel a tidbit of what they always feel like, particularly when they were young. So they're downloading that into me. That's part of the projective identification of it. But anyway, so then there's that phase. Then there will be some bumpy roads ahead. But then eventually, when I pass the test, or if there is a threat of the relationship ending, like maybe they terminate with me and they say, I'm done with you. And I'm like, are you sure? Because this is we've been here before, and you're totally okay to terminate. It's absolutely your choice, but I don't want to fill your spot in my schedule because we've been here before. So are you sure? And I was like, yeah. And then a couple weeks later, they want to come back, and so there'll be this point where they realize that they've been mean and hostile and unfair, and at this phase, I have passed the test. It's not a conscious test that they're giving me, but it is an unconscious test for them. They want to know, am I for real? Because they're so desperate for it to be real that if they just had a normal relationship, there wouldn't be a lot of tests, right? There wouldn't be a lot of opportunities to truly know, is he really in my corner? Is he really going to always be here? Because I need to know that now, right? And in other relationships, you just figure that out over years, right? But for people with borderline, they're so desperate because for reasonable reasons, they need to know right away. They really want to know right away. And unconsciously, they think that if they test the relationship, it will help them to know. Other relationships outside of therapeutic specialists, the test will actually backfire and the person will leave, even though they might have stayed long term. Whereas for me, I'm trained, and others like me are trained to see the signs of that and to not react to it and know that it is a test. And so we will pass it. And then there'll be this point where they say, oh, okay, he passed the test. Wow. I feel so happy. I'm starting to warm up. He's starting to be all good again. But at this phase, I'm now looking back over the past 5 weeks and realizing I've been a jerk face to my therapist, and I feel horrible and I don't know what to do about it. Now, there are a lot of different reactions to this phase. Some people will become very ashamed and defensive, but a lot of borderline clients will become very tender in this moment. They'll just be like, I'm so sorry I did it again. And do you forgive me? Now they're in this phase where I'm starting to become all good, but they're also always in this mindset of there's something wrong with them that they're going to be abandoned for. And so they're like, are you sure you like me? And so there's this phase of desperation, and it often can be a very childish place for them, a very desperate place for them, a very shameful place for them. It's just like, did I screw it up? Oh my God, I had this beautiful thing and I did this thing again, or did I do this thing? It's complicated. But then this phase, so then there's that phase, and there's the reconciliation of just like, okay, we're good. And then they can start to idealize in a very severe way, and then they're trying to get back to that place of like, they're always running on the treadmill. They're always trying to get to that security. So all good. Oh, you're the best. You're the smartest. Oh my God, I can't wait to talk to you. I want to see you, for more than an hour a week and this sort of thing. It's all normal. And sometimes I will do 2 hours a week, that kind of thing. Then it crosses the line. And then it's like, I've been really vulnerable. I don't know if this describes all people that I've experienced with borderline, but it is, at least generally speaking, one of the cycles that I will frequently see. And so getting back to why I went down that road is that this presentation on this audio reminds me of that phase as the individual starts to go, okay, well, they passed the test, and I'm starting to see them as all good again, and I'm starting to orient all my desperation towards them again. But, I've been a jerk face, and there'll be this kind of pleading involved. So let's rewind.
I don't understand. Is this what you want?
No. Oh, no, a hug will save it all. Everything we
I just wanted to touch you.
Really? After all the shit you just said?
I just wanted to give
After
you a
all this
hug.
shit you fucking accused me of? You want to touch me?
Please stop. Please stop. Please, I just wanted to hug you. Please sit by.
And the way that he is reacting is another common aspect of the dynamic that I will see between borderline individuals and their partners. I don't know if she has borderline. I don't know anything about these people, but it will unfortunately be very hurtful to the partners of people with borderline, and partners of borderline often will have their own attachment insecurities and their own issues and their own abuse histories, which Johnny Depp has attested to. And then at that point, the partner of the borderline person will finally feel safe to reject them back, of just like, now you're coming to me and I am so resentful of you that I'm going to express my anger towards you by rejecting you back, or you've been abusive to me for the past 3 days and I just don't feel up for hugging you. Like, or you're not going to erase what just happened by hugging me. Like, it's that kind of attitude, and it's a vicious cycle that these couples will get into. And what I will do with couples is I will say, to the Johnny Depps, I will say, you don't have to hug, but if you want a hug, could help. And 2, hugging doesn't mean that the issue is over. It means that you're hugging. And we can absolutely address any resentment, and you have any anger, any hurt, but hugging can be a good thing to get things going in the right direction if you want to, that kind of thing. Because to the people with borderline, to reject their hug in that state is going to set everything back miles. Now, if you're in the process of breaking up, then that's just, I guess, what's going to happen. But if you're trying to work things out, then I will try to, because hugging can really help everyone.
I wanted to end
Yeah,
that.
we did that last night. It's fine. That was good enough. No, because I'm nothing to you, and I will always be nothing to you.
Calm. Calm.
Okay, well, you're not my shin.
Your hands back. Please just calm down.
No, you're fucking hard.
And I don't know, but you hear the tone of her voice. It is that of a younger person, a child, if you will. I don't know if that's accurate, but it kind of sounds that way to me, and I don't know what that means. But one speculation that I might have is that when we have those kinds of desperations and we're very hurt and scared, we will regress to a younger mindset. You parents out there have seen your kids do this. I'm quite positive. It's very common for a 6-year-old to regress to that of a 3-year-old or something along those lines, and you'll notice it. You'll see, like, my 6-year-old is now doing things that they did when they were 3, even their syntax or the things that they're interested in. Now, if it's just temporary because they're tired or they're just trying to appeal to you or something, or they're jealous of their younger sibling, it's another reason why they'll often regress, because they see the attention that 3-year-old sister is getting, and at 6 they want that attention back, and so they'll regress too, like, I'm small too. And so temporary regressions are quite normal and healthy, if you will. But if they're very long standing, like after a death in the family or abuse that's happening, kids might regress permanently to some extent. But anyway, so in this instance, we hear a very younger version of her voice. It doesn't sound like her other voices. We've heard other kinds of voices in the audio recordings. There's the bulldoze voice, and then there was the consoling voice of when he was trying to hurt himself. It's like, no, don't do that, don't, just really desperately trying to convince him not to hurt himself. And so in this one, we hear a different voice. I don't know exactly what that means, but what I hear is Amber Heard, is desperate in this moment. She is desperate for closeness, for forgiveness, or something. Now, of course, if you're on the pro Amber Heard side, you would say, well, she's abused, and so she has this voice because she's trying to make herself small, which is true. When you are abused, it certainly isn't universal, but you can often adopt a regressive state to garner some sympathy from your abuser. It's just like, I'm small, and you can do that as an adult, you can do that as a child, so I don't know.
No, we'll never see each other again. You won't don't take my fucking glasses off. You don't like fucking looking at not my fucking eyes? You will not see my eyes again.
Okay, so it sounds like she is coming into him physically, taking his glasses off to see his eyes, and he is now getting angry and saying, don't do that, you will not see my eyes again. Yeah, it's interesting. That was the first thing that the cross-examining attorney led with, was he has not looked at you in the trial, right? She's like, no, he hasn't looked at me during the trial. Yet you have looked at him. She's like, yeah, I've looked at him. And she keeps turning to the jury, which I know they're supposed to do, but it just looks weird. And the attorney is saying, he promised you that you were never going to see his eyes again. And she's like, I think I remember that. So what does that mean? He's angry, and he is like, I cut you off completely, or you'll never get a chance to look at these darling eyes again. Or I don't know. It's kind of an interesting line to go down with cross-examination.
See what the jury and judge think. Tell the world, Johnny. Tell them Johnny Depp. Johnny Depp, man, I'm a victim too of domestic violence, and yes. It's a fair fight. And see how many people believe or side with you.
Yeah, this is another really important part of the trial. There's audio of her saying, yeah, fine, go to the authorities, go to the jury, go to the judge, and you claim that you are a victim and see what they say. All right, so on one hand, if you are pro Johnny Depp, this is atrocious. This is an abusive individual, a woman, saying, as a man, no one's going to believe you if you claim you're a victim. So good luck with that, pal. If you are pro Amber Heard and you're assuming that she is a victim, then she's just trying to avoid going to court or something. Or I guess if you're pro Amber Heard, you might say Amber Heard is saying, yeah, go to court and see what they say, because you're gonna lose because of all the evidence against you, or something like that. I think that the pro Johnny Depp people hear this recording as the slam dunk piece of evidence that she's guilty, and it could mean a lot of things. It certainly doesn't look good for Amber Heard, though, right?
Finger. Every incident of abuse you've described to this jury, right?
I can't say for certain it was in every single incident.
But you've never known him not to wear rings, right?
In general, my experience with Johnny is that he wears rings almost all the time.
Yeah, this is a good point to bring up in cross, that if you claim that he beat you repeatedly over many different incidents, and during those beatings he was striking you in the face over and over and over again, and you also have claimed on the stand that he always wears rings, then, and I'm guessing they're going to get to this point, then shouldn't there be evidence of wounds from those rings? And yeah, if you're looking to add to the mountain of data against Amber Heard, then this is another piece of that mountain. Does it mean necessarily that she wasn't abused? No. Rings can absolutely compound the wounds for sure, but they don't necessarily, right? You can have rings that don't have sharp edges to it. You could hit someone with certain parts of your hand that the rings aren't on, but it does add a question mark, which is, not only were you claiming, and I've been saying this before this ring topic was brought up, not only is she claiming that she was being beaten, and on 3 occasions, I counted it, she said that she was beaten to unconsciousness. Not just 3 seconds of unconsciousness. Like, one time she said she was beaten that evening and the next day she woke up. She didn't say I just fell asleep. She said I lost consciousness, I don't remember what happened, and I woke up in the morning. And then the 3rd time she says, that time I know I had a concussion because I was beaten to unconsciousness, that kind of thing. Including the time when he lost his finger. I think that's that 3rd incident that I'm pretty sure she was talking about. So if there were no rings, you would imagine, again, I'm not a medical forensic person, so I'm a lay person when it comes to this, but I would imagine you would have much more visible bruising and wounds, and then you add to the fact that he has rings on, there would be additional reasons to believe that there would be massive bruising. She did exhibit some bruises in some photographs, but from my layperson perspective, they did not look commensurate with the case that she gave. Is it possible? Yeah, some people don't bruise very easily. Could he have hit her in places like in the hairline and on the body where you wouldn't see the bruises or something? But it's hard to piece it all together. It's hard to take all the testimony and claims from her and have it make sense. And this ring bit adds to the mountain of evidence against Amber Heard. And it just makes me wonder, because for a while now, I've been thinking that Johnny Depp might have been violent with her at times and physically abusive with her at times. I don't know. None of us know. Just want to remind people. before people attack me. None of us know. We have evidence, and you can certainly make a judgment call and think, well, it looks like this, and certainly that's what the jury is being asked to do. But none of us were there. They could all be lying. They could have never been in a relationship together, and none of us would know because we weren't there. So we just have to accept that. But if we go with the assumption, which, is possible, that although Johnny Depp was a victim, he was occasionally violent with her. And if that's true, which it's possible, and she did have some bruising from that and did take some pictures of that, it just makes me wonder, if that's true, why you would go way beyond that story and elaborate on it so far that you get way beyond the evidence. If she had made these claims and said, well, so he did hit me this one night, and it was brief. He hit me like 3 times, and here's the picture. Then I would say, okay, that stands to reason. There's a possibility she could be lying, could be a fake bruise, who knows? But there's not a lot to question there. There's not a lot to grab onto in terms of questioning her or thinking that she's lying. But the stories were so extreme. The visual evidence that she provides to back it up just doesn't match. It could be related. It could be real. Those extreme, violent, abusive moments could have happened. And for whatever reason, she just didn't have bruises. That happens sometimes. But it's just hard to reconcile.
And hit you in the face so many times that you don't remember. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And there's no injuries to your face in this picture, are there?
Not that this picture shows.
And there's no medical records reflecting that you sought treatment after this alleged incident either.
I did not seek medical treatment at this time.
So there's no medical records reflecting any injuries to your face after he hit you several times.
I did not need to go to the doctor at the time.
Despite hitting you several times that you lost count with rings on on his fingers.
That's correct.
How can you say that? Now, it makes me wonder if she previously made statements along those lines and feels like she has to keep it up, even though it's very hard to believe her. So I don't know if you can see that. Yeah, I guess you can see there aren't any signs of trauma to her face. I'm not a medical forensic person, as I keep saying. There is a bruise on her arm. Okay, so what could possibly have actually happened? Well, if we go with the hypothesis that Johnny Depp had been physical with her at times, either defensively or sometimes out of aggression, which I wouldn't doubt, even given his testimony, particularly the one where they're on the stairwell, and according to Johnny Depp and his employees, Amber Heard threw something at him, and Johnny Depp was yelling at her. She comes around, she punches him in the face. The bodyguard is trying to get Johnny Depp out, and Johnny Depp is like, no, he wants to stay. And that's not what typically a victim will want to do, right? So, or maybe there were times when he, as a victim, would just lose it and want to stay in the fight and just go after her, or at least just say, let me have it, show me how much you got, or whatever. I don't know. But is it possible that in those moments, sometimes he would reach out and grab her or something? It's possible. And so, if we go with, I'm speculating heavily, but I'm just trying to make sense of the evidence. I'm trying to make sense because there's the statements from everyone, which I am skeptical of everyone's claims because everyone has a stake in the game, except for a couple people. Like the couple therapist doesn't really have a stake, and her words were actually not helpful to Amber as well. But so I'm just trying to piece everything together and matching up this picture. So if I think of all the evidence and I think about this and I think, what happened? Okay. And we also go with Dr. Curry's diagnosis of histrionic, which I can't know if it's accurate or not, because again, each side's forensic psychologists or psychiatrists seemed to be at least kind of biased. Who knows? But this picture, there's a bruise, no bruising. So is it possible that he was physical with her either in a moment where he was drunk, or they were in a very physical, emotional, verbal fight, and they were both doing physical things to each other, and he grabbed her. There's a bruise. She takes a picture of it. So when histrionic individuals are young, when they're developing the defenses of histrionic, they are often abused. At the very least, they're made to feel very unsafe, and they learn that the only way to get to safety and away from danger is to garner a lot of attention through emotional expressions, through being good at things, through possible physical aspects, or even lying and being very dramatic and very noticeable. And it's real when they're 4 that they will get more safe if they orient themselves in a constant manner towards attention, and that becomes locked in neurologically. You become an adult and you're just always in this mode of constantly trying to get attention because you feel constantly threatened, and you're always running away from that towards a greater level of attention getting from other people. And if your method is to sometimes lie, to say things that are just outlandish, like, my dad is Arnold Schwarzenegger or something like that, because if you said that to a group of people that didn't know better, they'd be like, oh, really? You're great, and then it's, okay, I'm getting attention, I feel safe. That's that kind of thing. And they're in this constant state. And if you're very used to lying and you don't have any editor inside of you that prevents you from lying because you gave that up a long time ago because you had to in order to survive, then things will just fly out of your face. And then you have this bruise, you take a picture of it, and since you are feeling very unsafe because you always do, but also your relationship isn't going so well with Johnny Depp, and so you need to have some kind of security, and so you take a picture and you send it to your friend, you get a little bit of attention, and that attention kind of wears off, so you amp up the story. And let me tell you what else he did, and you say, and he beat me, he punched me. Oh, that's a little bit more attention. Not only that, but he punched me for a long time. A little bit more attention. Not only that, but he punched me into unconsciousness. And then you repeat that story over and over and over again. You start to believe it. And and I've been saying this from the beginning. Again, I have no idea about Amber Heard. She might be truthful about everything she's saying. She might not have histrionic. She might not have borderline. She might have PTSD. She might not. I don't know. I can't know. But for histrionic, we use this as a jumping off point. For histrionic people, they sometimes don't even necessarily know the difference between lies and truth. Because again, when they're 4 years old, in order for them to survive, they had to lie. Not all histrionic people resort to lying per se, but for those who do, it might help them neurologically to not even understand the difference between lies and truth, because it's easier to lie when you really believe it, right? So you have this very weird set of mechanisms in your brain that when it feels right to you to say something, it then just becomes canon. It just becomes, that's what happened. And you hook me up to a lie detector test, I will pass. So it's possible that's what's happening right now. Because why would you say that you were beat to unconsciousness, repeatedly beaten with fists, with rings on, and the only bruise is on your arm, which, that's a bruise for sure, but no sign on your face? You could literally believe yourself that that's what happened. Or you're so used to lying that you don't care. Or you feel like, well, he was a horrible husband, and yes, I'm lying in this instance, but I need to lie in order for people to understand, like, what's really happening here, that kind of thing. I don't know. Or something else, I don't know. But I'm just trying to figure out what actually might have happened. Or she, as I was saying earlier, at this time, she just had the bruise. He had been physical with her. At a later point, she makes up a story in order to get sympathy somehow and forgets what really happened. But she goes on the record and states this thing. Then they bust out this picture and she's like, oh my God, that must not have been the time. Or maybe I went a little too far. Well, I'm in too deep. I got to, there's got to be something there, right? As to what's happening. I mean, how do you say that, right? This is the next day. It's just, yeah, I can totally see why the jury was like, yeah, nah.
And that's the backless dress, right, Ms. Heard?
That is correct.
So the attorney in cross-examination is pointing out a lot of different moments where she claims to have been abused physically in a very extreme way, and then there's all these pictures of her showing no signs of injury. Amber Heard is claiming, well, I covered it all up with makeup, which is, slightly possible. The level of injury, though, especially she claims a broken nose, you would think there would be more evidence than the makeup could obscure. Plus, her makeup looks, I don't know, I'm not a makeup person, but there's, so I won't go down that road because I have no idea. But they also questioned her about, you claim that he had injured you all over your body, including your back. But here's a picture of you wearing a backless dress where it doesn't look like there's any sign of injury to your back. And in that instance, you're like, so you even put makeup on your back and risked showing it with your backless? You could have worn a different dress. Why did you wear that one? So I think it cast doubt for sure. Is it possible that she had been abused and covered it up with makeup? Yeah, it's possible, but cross-examination is doing a pretty good job breaking all this down.
You also told this jury about an incident in Australia in March of 2015.
Yes, that's correct.
You testified that after this alleged incident, you had cuts on your forearms, right?
Yes, that's true.
And you testified that you had cuts on the bottoms of your feet as well.
Yes, that's true.
And you testified that you had a bruise across your jaw from when Mr. Depp, quote, clocked you in the face, end quote.
That's true.
You didn't take any pictures of these injuries while you were in Australia, did you?
I don't think I took any pictures.
You just took 2 pictures of Mr. Depp's writing on a mirror. Isn't that right?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, I'm glad that cross-examination is going over this, because that's the way it seemed to me, was that, okay, you claim that you were massively abused, and there were times early on in your relationship where you would take pictures of bruises, and the day that you're talking about, you did take out your camera and take pictures of the evidence, the writing on the wall, the hair clump on the ground, and your claim is you did not take a picture of your face. That doesn't stand to reason. If there were no pictures, you could claim, I didn't think to, I was trying to survive, or I was afraid of taking pictures because I was afraid he's going to beat me some more. You can't make that claim because you took those pictures of the things on the wall. Or again, if there were no pictures at all of your face, you could say, well, I never wanted to go that far with the picture taking. But that's not true, because we know that she did take occasional pictures of her face. So is it possible that she forgot that she took pictures of these other things, but not her face? Is it possible that all those things are cover-upable with makeup, and that she went to these events underneath a thick blanket of obscuring makeup? She just had massive injuries from being repeatedly beaten over and over and over again, fist to face, to the point of unconsciousness, and there's no evidence. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible, but it's just really hard to comprehend that all this stuff is truthful.
So back to the phone smashing. You watched Mr. Depp smash the phone, right?
That's correct. I watched it.
And you testified that you were, quote, watching the phone every single time he pulled his hand back, end quote.
That's correct.
And according to you, this is when Mr. Depp lost the tip of his finger, right?
It is my best guess. I didn't notice his finger come off, obviously. I was watching him smash the phone and watching the pieces break.
Oh, I'm sure a lot of you were yelling at me as I didn't pick up on that, because I didn't pick up on that. She was testifying a couple days ago in one of the incidents that she claims to have been repeatedly struck by Johnny Depp, that he was smashing the phone against the counter, and she surmises that's when he lost his finger. She says, that's my best guess. So she's not saying she saw the finger get smashed to the point of falling off, which would be unusual, right? That you could smash your own finger, one, and if you did, that you wouldn't reel in pain and show sign of the injury. Now, I guess Amber might say that he was highly intoxicated, which, could be a factor. But so she's not saying she knows that's when he lost his finger. She's saying it's when she guesses it's happened, because she later found out that his finger had come off. And I think what she's saying is, I didn't take his finger off, so I don't know when it came off, but this is my best guess as to when it came off. Okay. And by the way, I've skipped forward a lot of time. Actually, we're on another day even. And cross-examination was really going after her regarding the donations. There was a lot of questions Amber didn't seem to be responding very well to it. So on one hand, it's tick in the column, or several ticks in the column for the Johnny Depp team, in that it makes her look like she's a liar, one, because she promised to donate all $7 million to particular charities. And it also makes her look like that she might have just been in it for the money, which I don't think is true. I don't think Amber was in the relationship just for money. I don't. And she claims that she pledged all that money because she was being attacked online, people saying that she was only with Johnny Depp because of his money, that kind of thing. And she wanted to prove to everyone that that wasn't true. So that's unfortunate that people would be accusing her of that, because I do not think that's true. I do not think she was in it for his fame or his money. I think that was part of his initial appeal, but they clearly had a fused relationship, highly conflictual, with a strong bond, with a lot in common, with a lot that maybe resonates with each other regarding their trauma histories and their interests. And anyway, so the cross-examination lawyer was really going after her about that. So on one hand, it makes her look like a liar and someone who was in it just for the money. On the other hand, I can see kind of, and I've said this before previously, because this clip was making the rounds online, and I was saying, well, yeah, it's possible that at the time she thought, I don't need this money, I'll be fine, and I don't want people thinking that I'm in it just for the money, and I'll donate all $7 million to charities, and I'll just sort of avoid the whole thing. Again, she's pretty young at this point of the divorce. I think she's about 30 years old. That's not super young, but she met Johnny when she was 22, and so she probably just didn't know the landscape financially post-divorce in terms of what that would look like, or what it might look like. That she might have to defend herself in a defamation case, that she might have to deal with a career that will end because of the bad press or whatever. So I could imagine someone a bit naively saying, I'll donate all of that and I'll be fine because I'll get more work and I can just move on with my life. And then realizing, oh no, I can't do that because I'm suddenly now faced with a lawsuit or other kinds of things, or the prospect of not getting any sort of work, or I didn't realize how much I enjoyed my lifestyle being with Johnny. I now need to get a lot of security, and I didn't realize how much that would cost in terms of personnel and in terms of my home security system. So who knows? I don't know. And she also claims that she pledged it, but she didn't intend on giving all of that money in one chunk. She was going to eventually give all that money. And that's what I meant by pledge. Is that true or not true? I don't know. Is that possible? Sure, I could see that being possible. When you say pledge, that can mean a lot of different things. But that certainly wasn't the spirit behind what she was saying, right? She wasn't saying, well, over the next 25 years, I'll give $7 million. I'm pretty sure she meant that money, as soon as I get it, is going to go to charity. Now, I think, again, she shoots herself in the foot. The way she was responding, question, and she would turn to the jury. So it just has a weird mechanical look to it. It doesn't seem natural. So it lends itself to the lack of credibility issue. But I think, again, I could have shown the sequence. It was pretty enraging, honestly, just how frustrating this conversation was. And all she had, and she did occasionally kind of respond well to it, but I just think you would say, if you're in her position, that she would just say, yeah, I did pledge it. You didn't. And then Camille would ask, you did, is that her name, Camille Vasquez? You didn't give that money. And Amber could say, yeah, I didn't. I stupidly made that pledge before I realized what was going to happen after the divorce. And it was really stupid of me to do that. I didn't know better. And I've apologized to the ACLU and whomever else she pledged to. Just say that. Or, I stupidly committed early. I still plan on giving the money later, but I after this hearing, if I lose, I don't know if I'll have the money. I don't know. Just say something like that. But the way she responds, she was really combative and claiming, like, well, I pledged it. And in the interview, she says she's just going to give the money. She didn't talk about any pledging. Now, she could claim, well, in the interview, I wasn't being super specific. But there's just other ways of responding to these questions that would not jeopardize your entire credibility. And it just makes me wonder if she had better counsel or just a better way, better strategy. I don't know. It just makes me wonder.
In Australia, when we had the big fight where I lost the tip of my finger, at least 5 bathrooms and 2 bedrooms I went
to avoid talking to me, to avoid
escape
working it out. That's
to escape
problem.
the fight.
You don't escape the fight. You escape.
All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.